Well, last week, of course, was a disappointing result and performance, but I mean, there's been a few days since then to sort of get your head around that and put it behind you and move on. What's your thoughts on that now, heading into what's a huge game against Hearts at Tynecastle this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the Motherwell game was a poor day at the office as far as we're concerned. You look back to the previous couple of fixtures where, a few days before the Motherwell game we'd beaten St Mirren, convincingly 3-1 at home. And the week before that, played at Ibrox and should have won the game, but for a late equaliser. So I think there's going to be ups and downs throughout the season, and it's how we respond to those difficult moments and make sure that we learn from the mistakes that we've made, not just as players but me as well and the coaching staff, and make sure that we don't make the same mistakes again. So the Hearts game is another really difficult challenge, but there are no easy games in this league. Hearts are flying at the moment, unbeaten in the league. I thought we performed really well against them actually in the early part of the season. We were 2-1 up and unfortunately gave away a penalty for the equaliser and then get done with the sucker punch from the corner in the last minute of the game. But Tynecastle is a great venue. A lot of our players have never played there before, but it's it's one of the best away days in the calendar from a player's perspective. The atmosphere is always good, and I would imagine this time round it'll be even more buoyant than before because Hearts are sitting top of the table. So we know it's going to be a tough test, but it's one that we're really excited for.
How frustrating are the inconsistencies this season? Because even that Hearts game you're referring to, you were in the lead and then you end up 3-2 down in the end. How frustrating has that been for you, and how do you sort of look to combat that?
Well, of course, it is a major frustration for us because of the 10 games that we've played, I think we've drawn 4 of them, won 3, lost 3. And of some of the fixtures, in 5 of them we were leading and ended up to go on to drop points in those games. So it's about learning, I suppose, in this early part of the campaign. A lot of new players. I don't want to keep repeating myself, but there is a lot of new faces, a young squad of players, and it's about trying to make sure that we eradicate those mistakes that have cost us points up to now. But I think if you look across the board at all of the teams, there's inconsistencies. Apart from Hearts, probably, every other team is winning and losing and drawing, and it's the team that's the most consistent come the end of the season. They're the ones that go on to finish in the high places in the table. So we're going into that second round of fixtures now, and I think we should have a better understanding of the opposition that we're due to face. Hearts, I don't think will have changed a great deal from the last time we played against them. They've got some really, really good players all over the pitch. Solid pairings in the defence, in the middle of the pitch. They've got an array of quality in the forward areas. Whether these players are starting or coming off the bench and making positive impacts. So we're going to have to be really organised out of possession, but also really positive and aggressive. I think when we get the opposition, when we get the opportunity to go and attack the opposition. So we've performed relatively well, I think, across the board. I just think there has been the odd occasion where we've shot ourselves in the foot. But these types of games, when you look back to the Rangers game, the Hibs game, even the Aberdeen game at home, the 2 Rapid Vienna fixtures, where we're probably viewed as being underdogs going into those games, I think they're the games that probably bring the best out of us. So we're hoping for a similar outcome in the game on Sunday.
Yeah, because I think Derek McKinnon said yesterday he can't see their form dipping currently. He just can't see that happening. But how confident are you that you can get the better of them, because you did already ran them close this season? Yeah,
I mean, look, I think Derek is, it's probably right to say that. I think when your team is winning, it's a great habit to be in, and I would imagine the training ground is a really positive place for Hearts at the moment, and there's a lot of confidence within the building. But I think the position that Hearts find themselves in, it probably brings with it its own pressures as well. The level of expectancy among the supporters lifts automatically when you've had the kind of start that Hearts have had. But I think I think any team in this league is capable of beating anybody else, and we certainly don't have a defeatist mindset when we're going into the game on Sunday. People in the media and others with our club may view Hearts as big favourites, but we certainly believe if we turn up and perform the way we know we're capable of, then we can certainly give them a game. And we had a great kind of track record there last season at Tynecastle, and hopefully we can go and do the same this year.
And you had some chat this week with Ivan Dolce and his situation. What did you say to him, and is he a player that you hope you can perhaps use this weekend? He's already shown that he can score goals against Hearts, somebody that you would hope to be firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, I mean, look, Ivan is a really important player for us, but no more important than any other member of the squad. And he had a fantastic start to the campaign. He got August Player of the Month, and then I think his form took a little bit of a dip. But that's not just about Ivan. I think when you've got young players the way that we have, I think those dips in performance are going to happen throughout the campaign. And all we're trying to say to those younger players is that in order to reach the level that they all want to get to, you need to be consistent week in, week out. You can't just have a good game here and there. It needs to happen regularly. And if that does happen, then you keep your place in the team. If you don't, then you've got to come out and somebody else gets their opportunity. But it's not just about one player here. Ivan has been a really important player for us, and a player that we really believe in, because he's showed already what he's capable of doing with that unbelievable start in terms of the goals scored. But it's about the overall package for me. It's being an attacking player, it's about goals and assists, but it's also about working hard for the team when we don't have the ball.
And do you feel from his sort of reaction speaking to him, that he is going to find that form again this season? Because as you say, when they're young, it can be inconsistent.
Yeah, I mean, look, as I said, he's not the only person that I speak to. I speak to all the players across the board on an individual basis sometimes, and sometimes collectively in different types of meetings that we have. But the reaction that Ivan has showed me in training and in the games that he's came on has been really, really positive. And he's prepared well for the game at the weekend, and he's certainly pushing for that starting slot again.
And what's the latest with Ross Graham and Max Waters? How are they coming on?
They're on track to be back into the training squad towards the end of this month, and we'll be really looking forward to having them back in as well, because we've got a really busy schedule coming after the international break. I think we've got 7 games in the month of December, so the squad is certainly going to be tested during those moments. And we've had to go through periods of this campaign already missing a number of key players, and Ross Graham is our club captain. Max Waters got off to the kind of start that most strikers can only dream of at a new club, and then unfortunately picked up the hamstring injury. But when we've got a fully fit squad and that competition that we need for places, then we're as good as any team in this league. But it's it's about getting these guys back and then making sure they stay back.
And any other team news?
No other team news. Everybody's good. Everybody's excited, looking forward to the game, and desperate to get back to winning ways.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You mentioned the performances against Rapid and Hearts and Hibs and Rangers are probably the best that Dundee United have had so far this season. Is that perhaps down to the fact that these are very offensive teams when they come to play Dundee United, and there are other opportunities that come along? And can we expect something similar on Saturday? Yeah,
well, I think I think, as I said, against Motherwell we had a really bad evening, and I held my hands up after the game saying that tactically I felt I got it wrong on the night, and I think the games where we've been at our best is when we're counter-attacking on teams. We've got real pace and dynamic players at the top end of the pitch, and I think when we're sitting in that low block, being compact, being resilient and hard to break down, and then in those transitions when we force the opposition into making mistakes, I think that's where we're at our most dangerous. So it's about reminding the players of those games, of those attributes that we've got within the group, and trying to implement them into the games going forward. And that will start on Sunday against Hearts.
You said earlier that you didn't feel that Hearts had changed that much and how they were going to probably perform against Dundee United at the weekend. Do you feel that Dundee United will be performing the same, or do you think they'll perform differently this weekend against Hearts?
No, I mean, look, we're looking for a similar level of performance to the one that we showed against Hearts at Tannadice in the early part of the season. You know, I thought we were terrific on the day, and but for a poor decision that led to a penalty, and then obviously not seeing out the game towards the end, we end up losing the game 3-2. But I thought over the whole piece there wasn't a great deal between the two teams. Now, since then, Hearts have not lost the game. They're sitting top of the table for a reason. They deserve to be there. I think their recruitment during the summer has been excellent. You can see that with the quality of the players that they have, not just in the forward line, but the likes of Findlay in there alongside Halkin at the back line. They brought in the new goalkeeper. He's made a big difference to them as well, I think. But in terms of the style of play, I don't expect a great difference to what we saw the last time out. And it's all about on the day. We have to perform. We have to make sure that we start brightly. I think that's something that we need to make sure that we do, because in the last 5 fixtures we've given the opposition a 1-goal head start, and you just simply cannot do that. So it's about being compact, it's about staying in the game, and then it's about punishing the opposition when we get the opportunities.
How do you overcome that issue, giving away early goals or giving other teams a 1-day start?
Well, listen, it's the $1 million question, because it's something that we're trying to figure out. We don't ever go out with an intention of having a slow start. Sometimes you've got to credit the opposition, but it's certainly something that we've got control of, and it's certainly something that we need to do better. And hopefully that will start on Sunday.
I think perhaps this year has been highlighted how competitive the Premier League is with Hearts being up there. Mm-hmm. But not only that, at the start of the season, if you'd said the first management changes to take place would be that of Celtic and Rangers, that would have come as a surprise as most people. How does that come to you as a manager in this particular league when things like that happen? Well,
look, I think Hearts have certainly benefited greatly from both Celtic and Rangers having such a poor start. There has been a significant investment at Hearts, not just this year, but over maybe the last 5 or 6 years, and I think with that investment, they expect to be up there competing with Celtic and Rangers for league titles and for domestic cups. Hearts have done exactly what they set out to do, which is have a really positive start in the first round of games. Celtic and Rangers have both changed their management teams, as you said, and I think both teams seem to have had a positive outcome from that. But I think Hearts being top of the table, like I said to a previous question, I think that brings with it its own pressures. I don't think any of us expect Celtic and Rangers to go through the campaign without being up there competing for the league. And it's it's just whether Hearts can stay up there, I suppose. We all can remember last season Aberdeen had a terrific start and were leading the league for a period of time, and then the wheels came off. So it's up to Hearts, I suppose, to focus on their business. I've got to focus on what's happening here at Dundee United. We need to improve, we need to get better, we need to win more games of football. After the game against Motherwell last week, we need to get back to basics, and hopefully, as I said, that will start this weekend against Hearts.
With that in mind, you have had a huge turnover of staff in the summer. Looking 4 months into the season being in, how satisfied are you with what you've achieved with the people that you brought in during the summer break?
Well, look, we're always trying to move the club forward, and whether that's on or off the field. Yes, we had a big turnover of players in the summer. 14 new signings coming in. It can take some time for those guys to settle. Albeit, I don't think it did take a great deal of time, because I think we saw that in the early part of the campaign with some of the performances against some really good opposition. But I think what the first round of fixtures will have given to the new players is a real understanding of what to expect now going forward. We're going into that second round of fixtures now this weekend. The players will have a clearer understanding of what to expect from Hearts. It will be their first time at Tynecastle, but I think it's a really exciting one. It's a great venue to go and play. It's one of the best away days on the calendar from a player's perspective. It's going to be a great atmosphere, and those are the types of games that my players want to be involved in.